Welcome everyone. Planning and preparing for transformation. This is the topic that we'll be covering in this particular video. We will talk everything needs to be done, accounted for, and kept in mind for the transformation process. Let us first understand the definitions of change management. And as you can see in this particular slide, I have effectively shown you a pictographical representation of the change management. Look what we used to have an equilibrium as in the state which is in normal in condition. Now, because of the implementation initiatives, there are certain things that can go right or wrong. You know, the red line determines that everything has gone wrong and you could not do anything better. Probably the environment took place and it vanquished your organization all by yourself. Or let us believe that the initiative incorporated by the top management for change backfired. And this is where there is no change, which is it deteriorates. And in most probably in most of the cases, in case if you do not implement any change management initiative, this is what the organizational path of glory will be doing it. Let us understand the yellow line. It is wherein we need to understand that we have gone wrong or there is some sort of reaction in the natures from the top management with respect to the organizational effectiveness. And that is where we when we realize that we have gone down the drain and we need to react accordingly and correctively measures the required definition. So we change, and this is where the alternate starts around the scenario. Two is reactive change methods or things like that. But what is this green scenario? This is where we anticipate that the organization require a particular amount of change because of the change environment, because of the fact that there are certain data which are pointing that things are not going on the right track. So this is there is a dip in the performances before it changes, and this is what I call the proactive measures of change implementation. As in scenario 3, look what would have happened in case there wouldn't have any changes or no changes or backfired. It would have gone down the drain. Even if there was business scenario to be stable, the return on investment has enhanced, increased manifold. So change management is a discipline of preparing people for and supporting them through a business, technical, and probably organizational change. The overarching goal is to achieve the desired level of organizational performances as soon as possible that we look into it. Let us understand and try to identify the benefits of change management. Remember, it's a top management. Remember, it's a leaders, the vision and the mission of the leadership position. The person who is at the helm of the affairs needs to align the strategy and the sense of urgency for the change, key actions to be taken during these transition phases. Critical task had to be identified, it has to be managed, it has to be mitigated. In case if you misidentify, mismanage, and misintegrate those things, you are already running behind the schedule, and probably it might be the red path or the yellow path that has been depicted on the slide which has been shown to you. Business should remain as usual and should remain uninterrupted by the transformation activities. Operational readiness is quickly achieved at all levels of an organization. Remember, individual and team performances tips and their performances can be managed and enhanced thereby. And that is what the change management definition is all about it. Remember, we are talking about the transformational process that we have to take in place, the planning and the preparation stages that is done. If you can understand this very slide very minutely, it is going to help you by to understand the topic by leaps and bounds. So please focus on the definition of scenario 1 where there is no change or the change which has backfired. Scenario 2 is where there is a little bit of a return on investment, but definitely it is almost a reactive basis changes. But the best scenario is the scenario third one, which is proactive in nature. That is what we all aspire to be in. The transition phase. Let us understand what is the transition phase. On the x-axis, we are mapping the time for process. On the y-axis is the momentum of activity that the organization embarks upon. Remember, it is the organization attitude. The perception of the change will shift through the different phases of transformation, and managing them is what I call the foundation of managing organizational change. Early euphoria is when we find that there is a requirement for change because it is a performance of perishment situation that comes around it. So change is a must, but then there might be certain people who might be apprehensive, who might deny the fact that there is a change, there is a requirement for a change. Why? Because they cannot see or foresee the future. That is where the uncertainty exists. This is the corridor of shadow of the darkness that nobody wants to venture into. But believe me or not, once you overcome, now what I'm trying to do it with the yellow line, you see the performance goes below par, and if this is break even point is below par, and when it goes below par, when it is hitting below the belt for the organization, people are to be laid off. The fear and the resistance creeps in, and this is where you try to shift you shift your process altogether, because in case you do not shift, you move to paralysis motion, wherein you are being carried away by the environment. There is no change and probably you cannot react. But what will happen in cases of paralysis? Either you extinguish, the organization cease to exist, or the organization simply changes the business modalities in the all form, might have changed the industry. So what does it do around it? It is in this particular fear stages that we try to strive on those dark alleys, testing and accepting how to do about it, test the waters of new changes that needs to be taken care for. And this is where the level comes about it. Remember, from the denial stage of the quadrant, we have gone to the resistance stage, and this is the stage we call the exploration stage, where we are actually testing and assessing what kind of reaction comes around it. And slowly and steadily you will test the success. The sweet taste of success is there, where thereby where you will start adapting and committing yourself. And the four stages of transition curve, right from denial, resistance, exploration and commitment, happens around it. Let us understand the information. It is the objectives of change might be based on organization and system or processes thereby. This is what we look into it. Now where is it what we are looking into it? The areas needs to be understood in terms of personal, individual, or an employee who is most probably obscured, or should I say obsessed with job security, the changes and responsibilities and position, the level of acceptance, compensation, and travel requirement. Now, why do we happen it? It is the individual employee that we're talking about it. He or she is always afraid of the insecurity that creeps about it, the level of responsibility that creeps around it, the career development that we're looking into it. Let us move to the next part is the new environment. Therein, we talk about values and rules, cultures, priorities, working styles, shared expectation, tacit knowledge, the technical know-how that comes around it, and at times tacit knowledge is the common sense that happens in an industry, as well as the network quality that we look into it, the relationship and the interactions. We will be moving into those value chain one by one in the subsequent slide. If we look into it, if the question is why does change initiative fails, why do we change it? So first and the foremost thing, 82% of the times it has been noted that it is the employee who make it happen, that the change does not take place and eventually falters. Inadequate sponsorship is the faith of the leadership, the top fellow out there, the top management in the board, which are apprehensive or not very clear around it. At times, changes have been depicted as an unrealistic expectation, and then even if change has been embarked upon, it has not been fully implemented in spirit. And you know, the top four reasons accomplished almost times the reasons the change in corporation failure is all about 9 out of 10 is the times. But believe me or not, every time the change happens and change is successful, it is a euphoric moment for the organization. So we will have those people related issues. Remember, I have noted that people related issues in the red marks, and if you look at it is approximately 70 to 80% of the time it will be the apprehensions of the top management, middle management, executives, supervisors, employees as a whole, who are the reasons behind the failure of the change management process altogether. This is what we are looking into it as such, the elusive big gain. Now, what do we go around it in the stage process? You know, when we talking about in a on a business scale in terms of time being plotted again on the x-axis and the value which has been created through the change management process, we have three stages. First is the implementation stage where there might not be much of an improvement. There might be approximately break-even point, but herein, if we sustain it, if we catch on to it, latch upon it, there will be the stage two, which is all about the marginal improvement. Remember, in the marginal improvement, the initiative has been accepted. It is been understood by the employees, and they understand the pros and cons of the change management process altogether. And this catapults to the stage three, where there are gains by leaps and bounds. Work is done totally in a different fashion. People behaviors towards the change is fundamentally and radically changed forever. This is the big elusive gain, the big gain. So many companies launches big initiative with an intention to change the entire company but fails to see the expected things. They have to start the programs, invest in technology, training, process, and thereafter only they can see some return, not before that. This is the moment where we don't invest time, energy. The most often neglected ingredients to see the big gain is the people's behavior that we talk around it. Remember, what are we talking around? The people risk management is understanding the fundamental risk of transformation and probably implementing it. Let us understand the leadership and the stakeholder management. This what I've been trying to tell you is all related to the transformation. Remember, planning and preparing for transformation is what we are talking under leadership alignment. You have to have people with authority, people with vision, people with power, people with the ability to influence the change. We need to have the communications. Communication is all about engagement, engagement with people, engagement with employees, the supervisor, the manager, the stakeholders, and taking them into confidences for the change management processes. Then we comes into the culture part, aligning individual beliefs to the team culture, individual beliefs to the organization value system. We have to produce and incorporate definitive supportive instruments to enhance the culture. Organizational design and governance is what we talk about it, designing the organization resources, optimizing them and the employee activities and effectiveness. We talk around the talent requirements, develop overall HR strategy, ensure that there is a retention of talent, ensure that attrition of the talent is not taking place at all. You need to understand the more the people retained by the organization, the chances of the growth becomes much brighter and much manifold. Manifold times it might increase. The workforce transformation transitions is where we plan and execute the smooth transition and maximize benefit without the disruption in any kind of productivity. We come to the last steps of learning and capability transfer is what wherein we talk about the whole experiences, which is enriching in itself, and it develops a sort of a knowledge, a sort of a tools and training to understand and thereby impart the same thing to the next level of employees that we talk around it. So The managing early ventures, yes, we have already said around it. We need to understand the leadership. This is what the people and the leaderships are all about it, where there has to be a proper communication. There were proper understanding of why the change has been incorporated and what are the benefits that are going to go around it. Then we need to understand the organizational level. These three would be the organizational level that comes around, wherein we need to understand the service management capability utilizing the mixed sourcing model, wherein how the organization is going to benefit and how this benefit is going to trickle to the employees thereby. This is what we look into it. We need to train staff, we need to develop them and probably enhance the skills and potentials thereby. We have to plan for the succession cases wherein the organization might or is willing to tread into newer direction, newer geographies, newer expansion plan, and so on and so forth. The last two is all about the learning capabilities, is all where we are going to build different stakeholders, our supply chain partners, our vendor management, the employability of the employees and the local population in and around. We need to target this thing in hand for enhancement of the skills. Remember, I have colored it on the basis of the process where it is all about change leadership in dark blue. The semi blue would be your organization and HR things, wherein the lightest one is your learning process that comes around here. This is what we look into it. Integrated transformation approach is the value chain approach that we come across with it. Remember, the primary things is all about analyzing, designing, build, and testing and deploying, but it is the secondary element that we keep on harping upon it. Remember, the secondary elements are being fragmented into change leadership, organization, and HR, and the learning as decided or discussed in the previous slide. Remember, change leadership is all about people risk, leadership alignment, communication, and culture. What's discussed in the previous slide. That organizational HR is the organizational design and the governance, workforce transition, and the talent requirement of the HR program. Where in the last one, which might be the fundamental shift for future days to come, for the futures of the organization, is all about the learning and capability transfer. It is the integrated change that we look into with the service to be delivered at the program and the project level to drive consistency one and around. Look here, I'm giving you just a Gantt chart for you to understand about a proxy dates, which tells you how the work is to be done in terms of identifying resources, developing them, and probably as the passage of time, like it's year one, this has become year two. In a full year, you have to look into different kinds of month and different kind of quarters before you actually go on to the life with the change product. So it is incremental procedures but definite procedures at the end of the day. It is definitely a data driven one, wherein we talk about the assessment and analysis part, the planning and design change solution, execute change solution thereby. So how precisions are these who have been worked around it? What are we looking into it? If we can record the data and have the feelers and the feedback from time and again from such procedures, it helps, it augments our understanding, it augments in our planning and preparing for the transformation. We know, we decide upon the change designs altogether. Executive solution that comes around it is what we are looking out here. Remember, was a part of a solution. The three-pronged approach is of conducting assessment, planning and designing the change solution, and thereby execute them. This is in the assessment analysis part. In the preparation stage, we need to understand on the analysis, why are we embarking upon a change in the first place? Is something going wrong internally, or is the environment itself is changing? And thus coercing the organization to change or reinvent itself. So the data visualization output is also one of the various approaches that can be incorporated. And in the planning and the design stage, we go for the Gantt chart method that has been discussed previously, wherein the tasks needs to be analyzed and milestones to be set. And this is everything needs to be done in the planning stage. We still have not embarked upon the change process. Therein, we need to build support and solicit cooperation from the different stakeholder that comes around it. This is what we look into it. Yes, so we have to have a vibrant communication strategy and a vibrant stakeholder engagement strategy. So the executive change solution is the leadership action plans, and the transfer knowledge plans is what we will always aspire to be around it. In the conduct of assessment and analysis, we establish the clarity of the business outcome in the first place, assess the leadership alignment altogether as to who is going to eventually head the new position altogether. And when I say eventual head, it might be a departmental functional unit or a locational head that we are talking around it. It can be every processes, part processes that needs to be understood as we define, fragment the definitions of business outcome. Similarly, we need to go for and collect the data and probably have always a leadership summit within the organization to discuss the data analysis which has been conducted and visualization that can be looked into all now and then. This is where we need to come to the second most thing is planning and designing. It is where the leadership actually decide how it has to be aligned all together. Neither milestone needs to be stretched or needs to be preponed based upon the data set that has been cap, captured. This is how we look into it. Plan data-driven strategic change solution, thereby design the data-driven strategic solution, then thereby to understand how we go across with it. We have to speak every now and then and thereby come across the positions. We come to the fag end of the presentation. I suppose there are another this is the penultimate slides before we come into it is of about executive change. Remember, we have started with conducting assessment analysis, planning and designing change, and now is the time when we implement the change, the data driven solution that becomes around it. Manage, monitor, and sustain data and the strategic change solutions time has been given out here. This is where a very simple thing wherein we have already decided upon what to be done and probably implementation. During the implementation stages, there might be certain hiccups, there might be certain issues, there might be certain problem that has been faced, needs to be broadened and probably isolated, and the issues should be resolved, the problem should be discussed and definitely mitigated thereby. And I'm sure your change management would have been a complete success. So let us understand the change lessons learned. It's a one size fit all strategy. Frequently, it's definitely poor results, and I'm sure most of the organizations are unique. If not the organization being unique, the situation in which they operates are unique. So it is not a one single size fits all strategy. Use insights, use data analysis to create the target solution. Create implementation plan that best utilizes money and resources by only implementing the selected solution. It is tough to manage what you can't measure. Definitely, yes. Whole team to be accountable for a certain responsibility, certain part of the work, and try to measure their effectiveness. Needs to and probably needs to understand the status and the progress towards the business outcome is all about it. Clearly define what success look. Remember, we have to have the established indicators of success to measure the degree of viability that we have achieved it. Without a comprehensive solution, success won't be sustainable. Definitely, yes. This is where you need to identify the initiative, identify the issues, identify the problems, identify what can take possibly go wrong and try to address them. It might be through talent, it might be through a process, it might be through a change, it might be through the organizational resources that needs to supplements to the new solution. Lack of clear direction and business objective leads to failure to achievement of results. Definitely yes. When your objectives are not defined, your goals are not being embarked upon, and the employees are not being completely transparently communicated, it is that tells you how you are going to work upon it, because this will lead to distortions of facts. So it has to be very clearly legibly told, absolutely in black and white, and then only you can gain the trust of the leadership. Then only you can have an alignment between the process and the outcomes. Thereby the last thing would be the decision based evidences vis-a-vis that intuition leads to more precise solution. Analyze everything objectively, self-reported data, study it back, reverse it, bounce it with people around who are competent enough, and see quantifiable demonstrations of the impact of change. Remember, use the result data to understand the root cause of the problem and identify key stakeholder requirement then and there. With this, I come to an end of this video. I am sure that most of you have understood the preparation stage, the planning stage for the transformation of an organization that is required. Thank you for watching this video.